Our next session is on school eligibility changes. We have you with you as your presenters, Jeremy Early, who is the acting branch chief of the School Eligibility and Oversight Branch, and Kai Kimbrough, director of Performance Management Group. Welcome to the stage, Jeremy and Kai.
Yay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
All right. So I'm Jeremy Early. As Anne-Marie mentioned, I'm the acting branch chief for our School Eligibility and Oversight Services branch.
And I am Kai Kimbrough. I am the director of the Performance Management Branch.
All right, so today our presentation to you all is pretty straightforward. We're going to talk about two sort of different topics. The first being how we are organized as SCOSB. I think most of you probably knew us in a time in which we were many regions all over the country. We are different now, and we're going to talk about that. If any of you were at NASFA, this is somewhat of a repeat, so you can tell me if I was right and I said the right things in the summer. And then Kai and I will talk about some of the Partner Connect updates, some of the updates that we've seen in the last year, and then some of the updates that we can look forward to moving forward. All right, so the first thing, as I mentioned earlier, is that we are now one national team. And so where most of you may have had, like I said, a region that you typically communicated with, that information now flows through one team out of, we're all over the country, but primarily we are out of headquarters here in DC. So when you look at our one team, we now have management over these functional areas that you see listed up here on the screen. And for that, I think in many ways, it makes it a little bit easier to figure out who to go to get your questions answered. So if you are eligibility, if you have questions about your applications, we have specific managers who work in that area for the entire country. Same with all of these areas here. The other thing that I would stress quite a bit, and some of you may laugh about this, but case teams is where we need to go for all communication. If you are trying to reach out to us, the email listed here, caseteams@ed.gov, is the place to start. My biggest advice, I know that it is very easy to want to say, yes, but I've worked with this analyst, or if I email Jeremy, it will go much faster. And while for some of you that may have been successful, I will tell you that we typically spend a portion of the day figuring out who is even going to respond to the email, who already responded to the email, did our messages match up, and the truth is we probably could have gotten to it and fixed the issue a lot quicker. So I would recommend starting with case teams. I can tell you that one of the things that we've done, which I think is an improvement over the last year, is that we have taken experienced full-time staff members and dedicated them just to responding to the case teams. In the past, when you would email Chicago, Denver, which is where I was, we would sort of share the wealth. We would each take turns sort of looking at the emails and answering them. There wasn't really like a lot of order to that. Now we have designated full-time staff who their sole job is to look and respond to those emails. So the goal there is to get consistent messaging out to you all as quick as we can. We do get several hundred emails a week, and so I know for many of you, you can say, oh, it can take a while. Our goal is 7 to 10 days at most to respond to those emails. I will tell you now, and I know this is being taped, so I will possibly regret it, but I would say if it does get to that point, then if you do have resources out there, if you do want to try emailing Jeremy, I'm happy to help you, but you really do want to start there to get the quickest and most efficient response. All right, so I will talk briefly sort of about each of our functional areas and how we are organized. So for eligibility, so you're thinking about everything that you put into the e-app, we have that team split up into sort of 3 team chiefs is what we call them. They are similar to how the regions were. They've sort of split the country up, and they handle, their teams handle those specific applications. So if you are, I say west of the Mississippi, you have Tammy. if you're East, you have Cherie, and then if you are one of our foreign institutions, or you are a new school, a potential initial certification, then Robin and her team will assist you. So the idea is once those applications get to them, they will assign that out to a member of their team. At that point, we always make it the goal, we hope that those analysts will reach out to you, sort of introduce themselves, say, I have your application, I've taken a look at it, here's what I might need. I will be honest, in this current environment, that may not always happen, so this would be a great opportunity or an example of when you would email case teams. If you ask for a status update, they know to share the name of your analyst, and then you are welcome to work with that analyst to try to get that application resolved as quick as possible. One of the other things that we've really focused on in the last year is trying to make this whole process more efficient. We've done that in a couple different ways. One is we looked carefully at our processes. So we looked at things and said, we've done this for so long, do we still need to do this? Does this get us from A to B as efficiently as it could? Are there other ways that we could do that? So we looked at our procedures and we made quite a few adjustments. The other thing we did was we looked at our systems, and we're going to talk about that. Kai's going to discuss the Partner Connect updates and releases that we've had and we will have. All of that is designed to speed this process up. And while I can admit and own that there has been some frustration around the system and learning the system and getting access to the system, we do believe it is working because even within the last, we had a pretty major release that we'll discuss in December of 25 that introduced automations into the approval process. So there were certain things that once you put that information into our system, if we didn't need to approve it, we no longer did. Back in the day in our old system, every single thing you put into our system, we had to have a person go through and approve. You have a new president, we need to approve that. We are now automating a lot of that information to move those applications through quicker. And we've seen since December that the inventory has been decreasing over time. So in essence, we are completing more work each week than we are getting into our queues. So it is working. We hope to speed it up because we're going to talk about a release coming in April, which will have a lot more of those automations. As mentioned here, we do focus when we started this work earlier last year and the one team sort of took over the applications, we did go back to our aged applications and we sort of started from oldest to newest. And so for many of you, if you had been waiting, we really did try to focus on that. And with that came a little bit of extra time needed. We needed to figure out on our team, why was this application here? What were we waiting on? How can we move it? What we're finding now is that as we've adjusted those processes, we've started adjusting the system to better help us. We are starting to move through those applications a lot quicker, and hopefully you all will start to see that. The other focus we've really put is on initial applications. So if you are a school who is interested in getting into the Title IV programs, in the past that was something that took us, I would say, longer than we would wanted. So we have, like I said, dedicated an entire team that is looking at those initial applications and trying to move those forward. The last thing I'll say about eligibility is we have an entire team focused on just our change in ownership and merger applications, and that is something that's really important to us. We know that we have an inventory of CIO and merger applications that need to move, and because of the complexity to those applications, we have to be very mindful about who is reviewing that, making sure that we've trained them and they have the right skill set to be able to process those applications efficiently, and especially with mergers, because when you think about a merger, you are taking those OPIDs and merging them into one, which takes all the systems that you work with and merging them into one. And so we have to be very careful with that. And so while recognizing that, we have worked really hard to get the right folks in place to move those applications through. What I can say is with CIOs and with mergers, a lot of it is dependent, and really with all of this, a lot of it is dependent on our partners here in the room. How quickly you respond to us, how communicative you are. So when you think about CIOs especially, making sure that you meet that 90-day requirement to notify us. if you are talking about a merger, making sure that you are working with us because it is extremely time sensitive. And so there's quite a bit that needs to happen in coordination with the school. And so we want to make sure that we're constantly communicating to make sure that that no step is missed. And even when you think about stepping back to CIOs, there is a lot of legal requirements that once a transaction happens, there are certain things that have to happen within 30 days to make sure the school doesn't lose eligibility. And so it is really important, and that's why we needed a specific team to focus on ensuring that temporary PPA gets out, that the application is complete, because the last thing we want is for a school to lose eligibility. And oftentimes when that happens, our hands become very tied by the law. So that's why that communication is really important. In all of this, when you think of eligibility, we will communicate with you as much as we can. So like I said, if you have questions, we're here this week. You're more than welcome to come talk to us. We will pull your application up on the screen. We will tell you what we know. If there is an analyst, we will give you their email so that you can start communicating with them. But we really want to try to help you get from A to B as quickly as possible. I think the other thing, and when I mentioned this at NASFA, I think it surprised some folks, so I want to make sure we're clear that if you read the handbook, for some schools, there is information that you do not have to wait on for our approval to move forward. So if you meet certain criteria, if you are fully certified, if you are on advanced pay, there is a lot that you simply have to notify us of, but you don't necessarily have to wait for approval. So I would encourage you to take a look at your PPA, take a look at the handbook, and determine if you are one of those schools. So if you've submitted for a new location and you are waiting for us, there is a potential chance that you didn't need to wait before you started dispersing aid. It was simply notifying us that as long as you have all of your approvals from your accreditor and your state, then you can move forward with that. So if there are any questions about that on a current application, I encourage you to stop by our tables this week, and we're happy to talk through that with you. Because if you don't need to wait, we would hope you want it. For those that might need to, so for example, if you're provisionally certified, that is something that each week our management team is running reports to figure out who are those schools, and is there a way that we can prioritize those applications because we recognize and respect that you're waiting on us. For our program reviews, I know all of you love it if we visit your school for a program review. But this is managed by one individual out of our Chicago office. The focus over the last year has been looking at our inventory and resolving those program reviews. And so for many of you, you may have heard, we have not started a lot of program reviews in the last year, and that has been very intentional. We recognize that, I thought that, yeah, that might get in the, yes, they're coming, so be ready. Now, but we recognized and respected that we needed to resolve our inventory, that we do no good in program reviews if we are sitting on findings and not telling you about it so that you can address them. So we did focus when we started sort of as one team back in March. We had nearly 200 open program reviews. That is now well below 100. We got that done. We got about half of it done in 25. The goal in 26 is to get most of the remaining backlog done. So you're thinking, like, if you have an open program review, you are welcome again. We flew Jason out here just to talk to some of you if you have questions. But we are working very proactively with the schools that do have open program reviews to get those resolved. One of the ways that we're doing that, and I think it's something that's worked well and will continue to do, is trying to work proactively with the school to resolve these issues. So working before we just go and issue a program review report, we get your response, we issue a final report. In that process, is there a way that we can work with the school to say, let's look at your problem together, let's make sure the issue got cured. Are there things that you can do on your end before we need to issue a final report so that when we do, you've taken care of the liabilities or you've dealt with the issue so that then we're not spending a lot of time on the back end trying to clean that up. The benefit to you all is in many cases we don't have to charge things like interest because you've proactively returned the funds. And so that would be my one recommendation when reviews start in the future, that if there are things that you can cure or handle, do it quickly. But know that our commitment from our team is to try to have that relationship with you all as well to make that happen. I think it moves them along quicker and more smoothly. And again, the last bullet here is where we hope to get. I can't say that we have been there for a while, but that is why we took this sort of pause in starting new reviews, because we do want to get back to a time frame in which we are getting information to you within 75 days of that program review happening so that you all can respond within a month to 60 days, and then we can get that final report to you so that positive change does come from the program review. I know most of you won't believe it, but when I was an analyst, I used to say that while this is not a fun experience, the hope is that you use this experience with us to sort of learn and get better. And that's what I think we're trying to make this process about as we move forward. So while we're not opposed to opening new reviews, if an issue comes up this year, we can look to AY 27 as when we will likely starting program reviews again. Real quick on some of our other areas. So for our financial analysts, all of those financial statements that are submitted, we recognize that we have an inventory that needs to be addressed, and we are addressing them. So one of the things that we've done just within the last couple weeks is we looked at all of our open cases to identify what of the financial statements that we have we would consider moot, meaning we've got a new financial statement in. That new statement is what we need to be looking at. Why is this one still open? And we are archiving them. We are administratively archiving them. So within the last, I believe, week, we've submitted to have 304 financials archived. So hopefully when you are logging into Easy Audit, you will start to see some of those records getting cleaned up and archived. So on your end, you can do what you need to do to know that's closed and that we're moving forward to future years. The other thing that we've done is focused on letters of credit, escrow funds. We recognize that those are huge, that there's a financial challenge for schools that have to post those. We recognize that for some schools that's not necessarily easy. And so if you are entitled to have that money back, we want to get it back to you. So we do have a person whose full-time job is to look at all those letters of credit, all those funds that we're holding into escrow. If we can return them, we have. I think I was joking earlier today, I feel like I spend huge chunks of my day just signing that letter, sending the money back. So we are doing that. The other thing that we're doing is looking very carefully at what we are asking of the institutions. So in many cases, you will see many of you, probably many in this room, have been sending emails asking questions about your letters of credit. You may be receiving letters saying, your letter of credit was at 32%, we're going to lower it to 10. Like we're going to go to a more minimum amount that still meets the requirements of the law, but is not where it is now. So we're trying to make those adjustments to be helpful to institutions while still meeting our regulatory and statutory obligations. So you hopefully have seen some relief there as well. With audits, it's the same issue with financial statements. We know that some of our annual audits need to be reviewed, and so we have looked very carefully at our risk tolerance and determined that some audits can be administratively archived. So like financials, we've had about 300 audits within the last couple of months that we've asked to be administratively archived. That process is ongoing, so we're hoping to see it in the next couple of weeks, that you'll start to see that some of your audits may be archived. If it cannot be archived, there is a potential issue, a potential liability owed back, then you can expect that there will be an analyst that reaches out to you and explains the process, explains what we need, and then there will be someone that you can communicate one-on-one with. The other thing that I think we've done that's been helpful is we recognize the access concerns, especially around Easy Audit. And so in the past, when an audit was due on March 31st, we allowed a 30-day grace period before we took any action on that late audit. We've now extended that to 60 days. And so the idea behind that is we will wait till the 61st day before we move forward with any type of past performance violation for that late audit to hopefully give some more time for us all to work together to get that audit submitted. And then the last I'll talk about on this screen is for any of our schools with method of payment. So if you are on HCM2, when we started as one team about a year ago, I believe we had, I would say, about 60 schools on HCM2. The first thing we did was we really evaluated each and every school to figure out, did they still need to be on HCM2? Was the issue that placed them on HCM2 something that was cured? Could we take them off? We were able to lower that to about 30 to 35 schools, and because of that, we were able to get all of those claims caught up. So we have an internal goal of approving every HCM2 claim within 30 days, and we do meet that goal. So I think at any given week, we have no more than 3 to 4 claims that are active, and all of them stay below 30 days. So that is something that we've worked really hard to achieve. That is SCOSB in a very quick nutshell. But now I will turn it over to Kai, who will, as I mentioned, talk about some of the updates that we've released into Partner Connect, and then I will pick it up to talk about some of the things we can look forward to.
Thank you, Jeremy. As Jeremy said, just to bring up some of the updates that we have with Partner Connect. Before I get into that, I just want to make sure that we reiterate to everyone what Partner Connect is. As far as the administration, the government, we are all about modernizing our technology. And if you've been in financial aid for a long time, you remember our legacy PEP system. You remember IFAP. You remember all of these old systems that we had, and you had to have multiple passwords, or some of them didn't even have security. You just had to know your school's OPE ID and then your TIN number to get in, and you had a whole lot of information in there. So again, with the increase of cybersecurity and the push to modernize technology, Partner Connect is something that the department is focusing on, and it's a multi-phased approach. And I want to reiterate that. It is a multi-phased approach. It would be great if we can just wake up one day, push a button, and everything that we need is there, but unfortunately that is not how this works. Because we are governed by statutes and regs and different business processes, things change over and over. So the first phase of Partner Connect is when we replaced it with the IFAP with the Knowledge Center, and then we had the web portal where you can go in and see your school's dashboard. And then for us in Oversight, the 2.0 release came out in December of 2023. That was the actual e-app, so that replaced the legacy eligibility application on the web. And for us, it replaced our processing module, which was the PEP system with the CRM system. So along with that, and again, with the modern technology, there are, the e-app has received updates, the CRM side that we received updates, but overall, when we're looking at a lot of the legacy systems that we have, one thing that the department did was look at pretty much bringing in all of our service sites in under one login. And mainly because of cybersecurity, as I said before, there were some systems that we logged into that it was just a TIN number and an OPE ID, and if you knew that, whether you were still at the school or whether you left the school, you could still get in there. So that was a way for bad actors to kind of come in and, either do some damage or just not really, sabotage some things that are out there. So with that, participation management, that was the system that we had used in the past, where you would actually go into the SAIG web enroll site and you would log in for everything. You would have different logins for the different systems that you used. And I believe in July of this year, we moved to our AIMS, which is our participation management system. So under AIMS is pretty much a one-stop shop. You guys come in, there is just one password, user ID and password that you use. You're able to access all of our legacy systems, such as COD and SLDS, ECDR, and those other ones that you need to get to. I know that there has been a lot of challenges with that, and I think part of that is twofold. One, we looked at what the security needs are for industry, and what we have to do to make sure that we protect the data, not only that you all have, but the data coming into us and you all's PII. But then we also realized that there was some I would say, creative practices at the different schools as far as how you all were processing your aid. And once we put those business rules in, I think what happened, it kind of stymied some of those internal procedures that you all were using. And so we're hearing you, we're getting the feedback, we're understanding how you are processing. But again, the main goal is to make sure that as far as system security is concerned, that is first and foremost what we are looking at. And also with that, Easy Audit. So Easy Audit actually was not part of the SAIG enrollment. That had its own login. This is where, as Jeremy was mentioned, we upload our financial statements, and we also have you upload your compliance audit. That went live in August. Because that is a completely separate system, a completely separate platform, there was a lot of interfacing that we had to do with the systems. And with technology, you know, there are challenges. We are, again, learning how some practices were done at the schools as far as who, you know, was given access, or if you had access and you gave your access to someone else. Again, those are the types of things that we're learning that was done out in the system, and I think that those are a lot of the challenges that we are recognizing. But again, thank you for your patience as we are working through that. So just some of the benefits of partner role management. As I said before, you know, it's a one-stop shop. It is a single username and password. You manage all of your things in one place. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to log into FSA Partner Connect. We know that you can go into the specific websites. You can go directly to COD. You can go directly to NSLDS and, you know, use your login because it's behind that Ames wall. But the one thing that we want to make sure that you recognize is that with your Partner Connect FSA ID, every 90 days, we do want you to log into Partner Connect through the Partner Connect website to keep that access updated. Because figure it out, if you submit your recertification, you're fully recertified between 4 to 6 years, there's no need for you to have to go back into the e-app. If you don't have any updates to any officials, you're not adding any programs, you're not adding any new locations, no one really goes into that site. However, for security purposes, as with, any other, login that you have, you still need to go in every so often to make sure that you're still there, you update your credentials. So every 90 days, just if you have the Partner Connect FSA ID, just go into Partner Connect through the actual Partner Connect site, log in there, and make sure that you keep that access up. Next. So this is, I think, the part where we found that there were a lot of internal practices and that there were some internal procedures that were being done that we kind of found out and we tripped people up on when the new business rules were put out there. So I'm going to actually read this so that I know I have this right, because it is somewhat confusing, especially when it comes with the SAIG mailboxes. So only one person can hold access to the specific mailbox that is processing batch services. When I say that, the one person, that is either, I should say the one entity, that's either the school, or if you have a third-party servicer, it's a third-party servicer. If your SAIG mailbox possesses batch services, both of you cannot hold on to that. And again, this goes back to some of the practices where we recognize that, if it was the school had the third-party servicer go in, log in, sign up, and they do everything for them. Because the school is the owner of the OPE ID, the school is responsible for the mailbox. And the school, once they receive access, they can then provide access to who they want in there. So if you are partnering with a third-party servicer and you want that third-party servicer to actually process your batch results, whether it's in COD and SLDS, that is fine, but just know that you won't be able to go in behind them and do it on their behalf. They are then responsible for doing that. Again, all systems are now behind Ames, and everyone needs a Partner Connect ID in order to get back. That's your first name dot last name at FSA ID. Make sure that you have that. And also the primary administrator and secondary administrator. If you all remember, before, I believe, Partner Connect, they were called the DPA, the Destination Point Administrator. Yeah, everybody's like, yep, that's what they were. Okay. So that's all it is. It's just the DPA and the ADPA. So we just had to change it for naming convention because of the new system. But the primary administrator and the secondary administrator are separate from the E&O administrator and the alternate E&O administrator. I think I see a lot of heads nodding, probably because we were on the phone with you ad nauseum to make sure that we get that right. Okay. So just make sure that at all times at the school, and I believe we probably have a lot of FADs. I don't know if there are any presidents or if there are any CFOs in here, but at all times at the school, there should be a primary administrator, a secondary administrator, an E&O administrator, and an alternate E&O administrator. Now, it's fine if they're kind of doing double duty, that's okay, but there has to be someone in those roles. So the primary administrator, secondary administrator, two separate people. E&O administrator, alternate E&O administrator, two separate people. Primary administrator, E&O administrator, they can be the same people when I say as far as cross-referencing with that. If you encounter any issues, please start with the help desk. That is the Partner Connect help desk that is actually on the site. They are our technical team that can help you with any systems access. The case team's email box is really just for eligibility purposes, applications, if you have questions about your CIO, if you want to know, how do I get this ownership tree in? That's really what the case team's mailbox is for. But any technical issues, any access issues, you really do need to start with the help desk. We work closely with our technology team, especially since, the launch of 3.0, and we're recognizing a lot of the access issues that you all are having and that we are receiving. We work with them. We have meetings twice a week to actually go over this with them to try to get things done. And again, it's understanding and recognizing how you all do your work. It's not that we're trying to say, that's the way you do it, now you have to do it our way. We're really just kind of learning from each other, hearing the feedback and understanding, the different ways that you all are processing out there in the real world. So sometimes these improvements or these changes are going to take a while for them to get done, and we recognize that. But like I said, we're definitely working with our technology team on a regular basis to try to get these improvements and to ensure that you all can get back on track with your processing. Let's see. The only thing I want to talk about on this slide is that, so I talked about the specific mailbox. The one thing I did want to talk about as far as practices, I know that there were a lot of issues with SAIG mailboxes that came up. Remember that for every OPE ID, that there is a primary mailbox, and that if you are the owner of that primary mailbox, then that is the mailbox that you should have. You should not be the primary owner of this mailbox, that mailbox, that mailbox, that mailbox. I understand that if you are let's say you're a community college system and you're a processing office or administrative office, and you at that office, you're there and you're working with all your different schools and your processing. We created something for that in order for you to be able to do that. It's called the district servicing office, so that the mailboxes can actually go through and you receive your ICERs, you receive your batches through the proper mailboxes. Those of you all who are operating as a district servicing office, but let's say that there was a school group or you guys have the same ownership, and because you were just great at your job at this school and you were helping a colleague out, so you got access to their mailbox, well, in the end, when we actually moved to PM behind the AIM system, that is kind of where those things got tangled up. So right now we are working with you, thank you for your patience again, to help us understand how you are processing and understand what your needs are to try to go back and get that untangled. But again, for mailboxes, there is just the primary mailbox. Now you can have all the secondary mailboxes that you need, but there is the primary mailbox that you have for the batch services. Easy Audit, single sign-on process. Again, Easy Audit came on board in August of this year, so that was a month behind. We moved to the PM, the partner management or participation management process when we moved everything behind Ames. For Easy Audit, there is it's kind of twofold. So in Ames, for Easy Audit, in order for a school to gain access, the primary administrator needs to grant access to school users through the AAMC. So if you're the primary administrator and you go into the AAMC and there are members of your school that needs access to Easy Audit, you would then go into the AAMC and you would grant them access to Easy Audit. If you have your auditors that need to upload into Easy Audit, it is the E&O administrator or the Eligibility and Oversight administrator that needs to log into their AAMC and they grant access to the auditor entity through the AAMC. But it doesn't stop there. Once the auditor entity, so if it's Jeremy Early, CPA, if he is the auditor entity and Kai Kimbrough works for Jeremy Auditing CPA, Jeremy has to go in and then grant Kai access to the Easy Audit through the AAMC under his name. So that way, again, we have to make sure we're monitoring who's going into the systems, who has access to the data, and who is, and pretty much protecting the PII. So I know in the past, which, some of y'all got slapped on the back of your hand, you took your login and you gave it to your auditor, and your auditor uploaded based off of your login. So again, we cannot have that for cybersecurity reasons. So again, if you are at the school and you are the primary administrator at the school, you can grant access to Easy Audit to all school users. If it is your auditor, your E&O admin has to go into their AAMC and grant access to the auditor. Now, if your E&O goes in and they're trying to grant access to the auditor, but the auditor is not listed there, meaning that this is a new audit firm, they haven't done work with, they haven't uploaded an Easy Audit before, on your behalf or on any school's behalf with the department, then what you would do is you would email easyaudit@ed.gov. And once you send it in, you will put the auditor's, the auditing firm's name, the contact, telephone number, and email. And make sure you send that up to easyaudit@ed.gov. Let's see.
We've got 20 minutes left.
Okay. So updates, as Jeremy said, and I believe he went over this in the NASPA conference this summer. So 3.1, 3.2, we had a lot of updates. 3.0 was the moving of the login behind Partner Connect, and 3.1 and 3.2, we saw things like automatic automations, as Jeremy was saying. There are some data elements that you're putting in on the e-app that once it comes in on the back end, it's automatically approved. We don't need to look at it, so we can focus on those things that we do need to process. We updated some sub-purposes on the actual e-app, so that way we can route your application and understand better what it is that the activity that you are trying to perform on that application. And this is the one I know you all really like. We got rid of the mandatory personal information for all of the officials.
I told her you might applaud that, so yeah.
He stayed on me about that and said,
I tell them that, they will like it.
He said, I told them at NASPA, are you going to make it happen? And I'm like, that's a lot of pressure,
I know,
Jeremy.
I did go back and I was like, I made a promise, you need to make this happen.
So we kept the promise. But again, the only reason why we needed that was for emergency contact purposes. So what we did is we updated the e-app. So now there's really just an emergency contact section, and it's even easier because all presidents must provide their contact information, because the president, CEO, is ultimately the responsible person, but we're asking for additional emergency contact information for natural disasters, closed schools, data security breaches. If it's the same person all the way through, it's fine. It's just really check box that you let us know what's in there, and then we can move forward with that. Now, there is a change that I know caused a lot of people some grief, so let me explain that. With the add drop Title IV programs, the Title IV programs obviously are, Pell Direct Loan, SEOSG, Teach Grant. What's happening is when you apply to participate in the program, when you apply to participate and be certified, what we're doing is we're saying, yes, you are eligible to pretty much participate in these programs. It is up to you to then at that point go in and decide what programs you want to participate in. So we're not saying, oh, you're approved for direct loan, but you're not approved for Pell. That's nothing that we do. So it's up to you at the school to decide what programs you want to participate in. So with the way the Section M or the Title IV add drop works now, if you are participating in all programs, in the past when you would go into the EAP, this is before December, you would go in and you would uncheck what you do not want to participate in. That is the exact opposite now. If there is a program that you are participating in, and let's say you no longer want to participate in the DL programs or you no longer want to participate in Teach, there is a section now that you go in and you actually identify that you want to withdraw from that program. So I don't want you to think that, oh, well, let me go and check it because that's what I did before. It is completely different, and you will get very different results from that. Let's see, the other thing that we did, we were able to have you export your educational programs, which is great because some of you all have about 200, 300, 400 programs that's out there. So it's great for you to export them and see, especially, just have that list as, things are coming up. We know that in 2030, the new SIP codes are coming out, different things that you need to have. So it's a great way for you to go ahead and export and see the different programs that you have. This other one is the authorized signature authority that we put out there. We've made it so that way the authorized signature authority must be the institution's president or the chief financial officer, or it has to be one of those delegated authorities. We also added certificates, so you no longer have to upload your policies and procedures. We added an opportunity for you to self-certify that you have, that you ensure that officials at your school are not debarred and that they actually can do business with the government. We added the prison education program certification to the signature page, as well as the gainful employment certification to the signature page. And then with the DocuSign process, we made updates with those as well. There is an opportunity, so if once the DocuSign gets to the president and it needs to be voided, there is now a way for it to come back for the submitter to go in, or the application administrator, E&O administrator, to go back in, make whatever corrections they need to make, and then for it to come back. And there are automatic emails that are coming, so if the president had not signed it in a certain time, another email will be sent out to the president to remind them to go ahead and to sign that email. The one thing I think we've pretty much covered, and I think everybody has it together now, is that the email cannot be a generic email. It has to go to Jeremy Early, president at abcuniversity.com. It can't just say president at abcu.com. It can't say financial aid office at ABCD, university. It has to go to a name, because when that happens, again, things kick out. It doesn't go to where it's supposed to be, and then firewall edits pretty much tend to happen.
I started to get very nervous that she was about to say my email out loud, so I was like, you're getting very close to it. All right, so I will just sort of add some tips or some concepts that we want you to think about as we have made this system more efficient. So as Kai had mentioned, we have started to put faith in our partners and trust that by doing these certifications, these self-certifications, that you on your side are doing your due diligence, that you're maintaining your administrative capability, and that you are reviewing this information. So in the past, you all know that when you submitted a recert, you had to submit all the policies and procedures, and then an analyst reviewed them, and you went back and forth, and it was a process. You all did not see it, but every single official that you all submitted, we had people behind the scenes doing all those debarment checks in sam.gov. We were making sure that they weren't debarred. We are now putting that faith in you and that trust in our partner to self-certify that you have looked at those policies and procedures, that you have utilized the excellent tools that we have on our training website, that you've asked questions if you need to. We are still a resource to answer questions. So as you're getting your recert ready, if you have questions about your refund policy or your SAP policy, ask us. But then we are going to put faith that when you self-certify, it is correct. Now I say that, and I also remind you that when we start program reviews back up in AY27, we will look at that. And an answer like, but you accepted my recert, will not be a sufficient answer if we find an issue. So if you have questions, we want to answer them proactively, but we also put trust in you, and we want to move this process forward quicker. When you are filling out the application, we want to make sure, this is a tip, do not write over records. You need to end date. So if you are closing a location, you are ending a program, end date that and add the new information. Do not write over it. If you have a president who has left, end date that president and add the new president. Unfortunately, because we keep all of that data, if we see that, it just requires that we send it back to you. So it will sort of delay the process in getting it approved. And I sort of talked earlier about just sort of adjusting our processes to try to make things more efficient. I will echo, or I will repeat, just so that we are very mindful, because we do get a lot of emails in the case team's mailbox. Again, just make sure, if you haven't done this, go back tonight, look and see, who is my primary administrator? Who is my secondary? Who is my E&O? Who is my alternate? And if you do not have those, we are here to help you figure it out. Because the goal is, we are happy to help you, and if you lose both of those people at the same time, we will help you. But the goal of having two people is that if one of them leaves, the other one can pick up and make those changes for you all, so that you never have to listen to the on-hold music at the help desk. So, advice from me to you. The other thing, and we do want to mention, is, we've talked a lot about how to use the case teams, when to go to the help desk. I don't want you to leave this presentation thinking that we're, you go to the help desk and we sort of let it be. We definitely want to assist you. If you find that you are getting to a point, you've had a ticket outstanding for a couple of weeks, we usually like to think around the 2-week mark. You can definitely reach out to case teams. We will try to see what we can do to try to assist you. We've had a couple cases where there was some miscommunication and maybe a ticket was closed and it shouldn't have been. We can help you in getting that open back up so that we can get that ticket resolved. So there are times in which we definitely can assist. I think our goal here is just to say, make sure you start with that help desk. If you come to case teams, and I know that, and we've definitely communicated between our partners at the different desks to say, at times you've been referred to us. Without starting there, we can't help you. Like, your answer for us, and you're going to get upset when we're like, no, you got to start at the help desk, because without that ticket, there's really nothing we can do to sort of push it forward for you. So you definitely want to start there. The last thing before we take questions is just sort of to talk about what's coming in the future. So again, as I said, we are focused on making our processes and our systems more efficient. So we talked about these automated adjustments to our system. When we launched the release in December, we sort of did what I'd call like beta testing. We took a couple pretty easy automations to sort of test them out in the system. We're going to go wild in April. So everything that can move through the system that does not require our approval, we are automating it. And the goal there is, I know that when many of you submit an application, you may submit some things that can be automated, some things that can't. We are designing the system so that those automations will move, which will then allow for our review time to be quicker. So we are trying to find ways that will help you get to what you need to have the documentation that you need in the system quicker. Let's see. And then as we sort of, the other thing we talked about is we are adding some additional sub-purposes. So as Kai had mentioned, we added some in some of our previous releases. We're adding some additional ones. I know one that's been of importance to most folks is anyone going through a CIO and doing the 90-day notice. So we are adding the sub-purpose for a 90-day notice, things like that, that again make it more clear and easier for you all to communicate to us the type of changes that you are making. And then sort of thinking to the future, and we are talking about this to try to move forward. We are talking, I would say, many times during the week, multi-days during the week, about the One Big Beautiful Bill and all of the requirements around those programs. We want to make sure that we are where we need to be when the time comes to help you all move forward with those programs. We are talking about additional automation, so we will look at, based on your school type, you may have different requirements than other schools, so we're trying to figure out if there are ways we can automate and make that more user-friendly based on your school type. And then one of the things, and sort of a big goal that we have, is we want to develop a process by which our state and accreditor partners can actually go into the system and put information into. So right now, when you go in and you upload all those documents, the goal would be that we get to a point where they could go in and give some of their approvals to try to help move this process along quicker, and you're not uploading PDFs and whatnot. So that's a goal in the future, but to give you an idea of where we're trying to move toward to make it more efficient. So with that, we will definitely take questions from anyone who might have those, and the QR code is there. I will say that before we get started on questions, I sound like a teacher, maybe because I'm married to one. We want to make sure that the questions are geared toward, being helpful for the whole audience. If you have a specific school question, we have a team that have flown in and they are ready to help you out in the main room. You are welcome to go out there. You can sit down at a computer and go through your specific case and have that privacy to do that. But we're happy to answer any questions that you have. And we do have some SMEs. If we can't answer it, hopefully some folks in the front that have a microphone will speak up and help us. So we'll start down here.
I have two suggestions for improvement. One is for when you email the president, is there any way that the financial aid administrator can also be copied? In today's day and age, everything is spam, right? So a lot of times they think they're getting spammed. Of course, I shouldn't click on that link. If we got it, we would, one, know it went out, and two, be able to tell them, hey, it's there, it's valid, please sign it. They get copied on everything we get. If we could get the reverse, that would be amazing.
We hear you, and having worked on the school side, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And then my second suggestion is, I know we're a variety of schools. We all have busy times. I think I probably am safe to say July and August is the worst. Mm-hmm. And so if we can avoid major system implementations in July and August, we've now been hit twice between NSLDS and this, would be amazing, because it really delays our ability to get that fall aid out. And I mean, there's no perfect month, I get it, but that one, July hurt a lot. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that feedback. And having been on the school side, now I'm embarrassed I didn't think about that. So not that I have always the control over it, but that is a very good point. So go ahead.
Thanks, Jeremy. I have two requests. I'm a third-party servicer. I know there are other third-party servicers here that would probably second this request. Two. So the first one is there a way to change it so that NSLDS, if you don't log in every 29 days, 30 days, you lose access. And then we have to call in, or I have to call in as the primary to get that access back for my staff. Not all of them go into every school every month. So that's my first request, because we've now got all these security in place that prevents the reasons that the 30-day rule went into play many years ago. That was my first thing. The second one, and I did talk to the Partner Connect team, but it would be really super helpful if we had more training tools, learning resources in the training center for third-party servicers specifically. We have so many different situations in schools do. It's very, very different. Those are my
Appreciate that.
requests.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank
Renee.
Hi, I'm Norma from a community college, Tulsa Community College. Mine's an eligibility question. Now that higher ed landscape for community colleges is starting to change, which we are advancing from delivering associate degrees to bachelor's degrees. So in preparation, we are a college that is moving in that direction. I just want to be prepared for that when I submit my eligibility for a new bachelor's degree. Is it anything different than what I already do with collecting state and accreditation documentation?
No,
No? Okay. Okay.
but I'm excited for you. Any questions?
All the way at the end in the green.
That's me, okay. So to assist in planning for any school that's having to add a new location that does have to wait for that approval to come back, what would be a good ballpark of how long we think potentially that would take to get processed? Being respectful, of course, of your work that you guys all have to do.
So what I will tell you is internally, our goal has always been about 90 days. That is where we want to get back to. We recognize we're not necessarily there now, but that is what our goal, all of our sort of internal goals, I talked about the program review process, same with eligibility. We have some internal goals for that. It is typically about 90 days.
Okay, thank you.
And I would use this opportunity, if you haven't, to definitely talk with someone at our desk out in the atrium, and we can see where that application is.
This is a suggestion. I'm trying to add a third-party servicer to my program participation agreement. You already know who they are. You already know who I am. Could this be one of those automated ones? Because we've been waiting.
The what? Can you say that again?
Okay, we're trying to add a third-party servicer to our program participation
Third-party
agreement.
servicer?
Yes. So you already know them, and they've added us to theirs, I'm thinking. And I've added them to ours. Since you already know both of us, could this be one of those automated ones where nobody has to look at it? Because we've been waiting for a little bit.
The thing with third-party servicers is that we have to make sure that the contracts align. So I'm not saying that we can't look at that in the future. There could be a way where we could possibly have some data entry points, but right now the reason being is that it does take a manual review for the third-party servicers.
So I do have two questions. The first one is, when the Easy Audit and everything happened and merged into Partner Connect, was there a blip with destination point administrators or primary administrators who also served as the eligibility and oversight? Because I was there as both. I've been eligibility oversight since 2023. I've been destination point administrator since 2022. That happened, and both our primary and secondary stayed, but then the eligibility oversight disappeared. And I spent from September until the end of February trying to get that back so that I could get access to then have access to Easy Audit to then give the access to our auditors. And since September through February, I had like the Easy Audit team, the case teams, the help desk, all three. And case teams, you guys were like, yeah, he's been E&O like since 2023. But nobody was like, there was like a disconnect. And I feel like I can't be the only one that happened to. Okay, I'm not crazy. Okay, it got fixed finally, but I was just like, it was one of those like, it just like, poof, I disappeared. I was like, okay. Okay, so it's not just me. All right, good. The other one is on state authorizations. This is the second year our auditors have brought it to our attention. So I'm going to ask just a question. At what point does the school need to add state authorizations, if you're operating out of different, and multiple states, to your PPA, any of that?
Like, at what point?
So we are an online institution. We are based out of Oakland, California, but we operate in 11 states. Every year when we did our recertifications, we would put in all of our state authorizations from all the different states and everything like that. And it was fine. 2 years ago, we had our recertification in '24. The reviewer refused to move our recertification until I removed all state authorizations except for California, where we were based out of, which was odd for me because I thought we had to get approval and say and show that we have approval to operate. And so I've kept that as documentation in case we got a program review and they're like, where's all your state authorizations? But it's like, I don't know. I just want to make sure I'm not misinterpreting at what point we need to show and report state authorization.
Is Bart Nicky down there?
Okay. So why don't we work one-on-one, and I will try to
Okay.
get an answer to that question. And so I want to consult. I don't want to say something out of turn. Because I turned to Kai, and I think our answer may have been slightly different. So I want to make sure we get you the right answer.
Okay.
So if we can connect after this, then
Yeah.
And I know that we are at time, so if you have additional questions, general questions, feedback, I appreciate it. We took the notes. I think there's some great ideas that you all shared. Or you just have questions about your school, we're out there and happy to help. So thank you very much.
Thank you.